Kundalini Awakening, the 3 secret techniques to activate your Kundalini. In this video, we're going to go over the 3 keys that I have personally found on my journey that have really helped to activate that Kundalini shakti that leads to the enlightenment of our soul in our body. If that interests you, then watch this video all the way to the end. Who am I? My name is T.J Keane. I'm a Kundalini Yogi, and that means I have been working on activating my Kundalini, awakening the full flow of that shakti energy for over 20 years at the time of making this video. And in all that time, I have activated my Kundalini in the traditional way, as you might imagine, of the yogis. But if I had known back then what I know now, the journey could have been a lot quicker, a lot easier, and a lot smoother. And by smoother, I mean relaxing. I'm talking about the feminine approach, the indirect approach, if you like. Okay. Kundalini Yoga is more of a masculine approach, a little bit more of a systematic approach. And to be quite honest with you, more about forcing that energy to awaken. What I'm going to share with you in this video, which is unprecedented, is a way to do it the feminine way, right? Which is just to relax and surrender to the energy that already wants to flow through you. You've just got to know how to get out of your own way. Essentially, how to completely relax. But when I say relax, I mean you've got to completely relinquish control with your mind, with your ego, and with all of the emotions that are stored in the cellular memory, as well as the physical tension. Okay. So before we jump in then, if you do enjoy this content, please do consider dropping a like, subscribing to the channel. It's a great way of supporting me. It really does make the world a difference. And if it does resonate with you, what I'm sharing in this video, then please do share, and let's get this message of awakening the Kundalini the right way, right? The easy and relaxing way out to as many people as possible. Thank you. So without further ado, let's break it down. So out of the 3 keys, there's 3 secret techniques that I have only recently discovered over the last year and a half. And I've been doing this for well over 20 years at the time of making this video. It's only in the last 18 months that I found this really easy, simple, relaxing way to activate the Kundalini. The first one, I was at a rainbow camp, a type of conscious festival that's been going on for 40 years here in the United Kingdom. And I went along to a workshop, and it was called TRE. Now, TRE, if you don't know, stands for Tension and Trauma Release Exercises. Okay, it was developed by an expert in trauma releasing called Dr. David Puccelli. Okay, so this is a technique or a series of 7 easy techniques that are designed to help people with PTSD who have had a lot of trauma in their life. And it kind of stimulates that neurogenic response of tremors that go through the body. You often see animals naturally doing this, like a dog or a duck. We say water off a duck's back, where they just rustle their feathers. And the tension that was previously in an encounter, let's say with another duck using this example, is just shaken off. And then they're completely serene and go back to normal, gliding along the duck pond, okay? But we don't do that. We tend to store that memory of the trigger as a sort of trauma held in the memory of the body, which we call the cellular memory. And this accumulates over time to such a degree that actually it becomes a little bit of a problem and can lead to disease. And that's kind of what PTSD is, when we've built up so much trauma in the body that we can't actually regulate our nervous system. So this is a way of regulating the nervous system, okay? Having said all that, for me, I'd already done a lot of work releasing trauma and so on, and I'd also done a lot of this Kundalini yoga and Kundalini dance, many ways of activating the Kundalini, but in kind of a more masculine way a lot of the time, certainly with regard to the yoga. When I went along to this TRE workshop, immediately my Kundalini completely awoke in a way that didn't require me to do the physical exercises, even the breathing exercises, singing the mantras, none of that. I literally just lay on my back and did these very simple exercises, and the Kundalini awoke in a very effective way indeed. So that was quite surprising. It's not something that TRE is designed to do, and it might not necessarily happen to you, but if you've done a lot of work already, if you've done a lot of yoga, a lot of energy work with Reiki and so on, then it might work for you. Of course, if you've got a lot of trauma, then it's probably something that you'd want to do with an expert. But I have taken this TRE a lot further because of my huge amount of knowledge and experience with awakening the Kundalini, and especially with Kundalini Yoga, that I know how to work with this energy in a way that it ensures that the Kundalini completely rises up through the chakras, right, the energy centers in the body, and keeps that sustained, so that I no longer have to even worry about doing Kundalini yoga or meditation or anything like that. I just have to do this system that I have developed, which all starts, the trigger, if you like, that gets the fire of the Kundalini shakti going, is this TRE. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one was another surprise. So soon after the TRE workshop, I went to Bosnia, a place called Visoko. And there you have these Bosnian pyramids, they're called, which experts feel they aren't actually pyramids, they're natural mountains. However, the guy that discovered these pyramids, Samir Asmanagic, he advocates that these are actually man-made pyramids going back a very, very long time, okay? And it's all about the energy, right? So when you go into these energy tunnels, okay, underneath one of the pyramids called the Temple of the Sun, which is the biggest one, and it's the famous one if you've seen videos or images of the Bosnian pyramids, this Temple of the Sun is the one that you would have seen. Well, these energy tunnels go actually deep into the earth and underneath this pyramid, okay? And when you sit in there, right, you get a lot of benefits. So people are absorbed in the negative ions that are in the atmosphere down there. You're completely shielded from the electromagnetic frequencies that we're bombarded with, right? It's called the invisible rainbow of all of these, the 5Gs and the Wi-Fis, and let alone the TV and the radio. You're completely shielded from all that EMF pollution, okay? Also, because you're deep inside the earth, right, you actually start resonating with the frequency of the earth's energy, which is the Schumann resonance, which is 7.8 hertz, okay, almost 8 hertz. So when I went in there, I simply sat down, and people are encouraged to go there and sit down around about an hour usually, and you get a ticket and you get a kind of a slot, and people meditate. But for me, I immediately found that it activated my Kundalini. I simply sat down, felt into the body, and immediately my Kundalini got activated without having to do any physical exercises, any yoga, any meditation, any breathing exercises, just being in these energy tunnels, okay, underneath the pyramid of the sun, okay, that was enough. So I would recommend trying to get to the Bosnian pyramids. There are many pyramids and sites in that area, the Temple of the Moon, etc. However, the Temple of the Sun is the best one because it has these energy tunnels. But for me, once I got accustomed to that, I could sit on top of any of the other pyramids. There's a dragon pyramid, and it would activate my Kundalini, Shakti, life force energy. But that Temple of the Sun, that's the most powerful one. So if you can't get to Bosnia, then think about a sacred site which is near you, which could be a power point, which means the earth energy is moving through these energy lines. We call them dragon lines. They're often conflated with ley lines that run all around the earth and create this web of invisible energy, this web of light, if you like, all around the earth. And at these nodes where these energy lines cross, okay, that's usually where a sacred site was placed by our ancestors. Of course, here in the United Kingdom, we've got Stonehenge is the most famous example of that. The second famous one would be Avebury Stone Circle, which is the largest one on the mainland. And then perhaps Glastonbury Tor, which our famous Glastonbury Festival is near. And of course, there are many other stone circles and what's called round barrows and all sorts of sites in this country where if you go into them, the round barrows I mentioned because you can go into this barrow. So it's like going into a cave. And these can be places where you can activate your Kundalini. Otherwise, you can go to gorges, caves, anywhere that goes into the earth. You shield yourself from the electromagnetic frequencies, okay? And you might have this highly charged atmosphere of negative ions. So that's something for you to explore as well, okay? The third and final way, and this it all happened in a short space of time, 18 months ago, was that I went along to Belgrade, which is the capital of Serbia. And there was a guy there called Jan Esman who had his Kundalini energy fully awakened, okay? He'd spent hours and hours and hours every single day for years, decades, activating his Kundalini so it flowed all the way through, okay? He was actually Danish, but he was in Belgrade doing this shakti pad, okay? This shakti pad is a transmission of energy. So just by being in the presence of someone who has their Kundalini Shakti activated, they can transmit it to you in a way that your Kundalini starts resonating with theirs. And so without you doing anything at all, you activate your Kundalini. So it's a really great way to get the energy flowing, get used to the feeling of it. And more important than that, get used to diverting your attention deep inside into the most subtle realm where this Kundalini energy resides and begins to activate and flow up through the chakras and beyond into the energy field. It's all about your subtle attention, okay? That is the key to not only awakening the energy, but keeping it flowing. That's the key, right? It's one thing to awaken it, but the secret is really to keep it flowing. So I found when I was in his presence that my energy just started flowing straight away. Everybody has an opportunity to go and sit with him, and he might place his hand on the crown chakra or somewhere else on the body and physically transmit the energy. So therefore you get a stronger transmission, a stronger transfer of energy through the crown chakra. When you divert cosmic energy down through the crown chakra, then the Kundalini will rise up to meet it, because this divine masculine transmission will activate the rising up of the divine feminine energy, which is what Shakti is, right? Kundalini, Shakti, the words are synonymous. The divine feminine energy, right? It's like the goddess rising to meet the Godhead. So Shakti pad, Shakti is the Kundalini, and pad is really this transmission that goes down, like a download, a spiritual download. So I found when I was sitting with him, my Kundalini got very activated. However, after that whole series of the theory, right, the trauma or tension release exercises, They're sitting in the Bosnian pyramids. They're going into the energy tunnels, okay, this place called Ragni. And finally, the Shakti pad in Belgrade. When I came back to the United Kingdom, I found that the energy was quite activated, but it wasn't flowing all the way through. It's like I'd had a lot more energy that wanted to come through, but it wasn't flowing all the way through. So I had to dedicate myself, like I promised Jan Esman, okay, the master, the guru, to meditate twice a day for a minimum of 40 minutes, which I did in the morning and later on in the afternoon. But actually, I felt that I had to do that because the energy was a bit stuck. It wasn't moving all the way through. And this was a bit disconcerting because, as you can imagine, I'm trying to walk around on my daily walk through the forest, and I've got a very strong force kind of moving from side to side, and actually became quite hard to walk because I had this invisible force kind of pushing me to each side because it wasn't flowing all the way through yet. So I almost had to do this exercises of just simply relaxing, surrendering, and meditating. Very strangely though, a few months after sitting with Jan Esman in Belgrade doing the Shakti pad and promising him that I would do this 2 periods of meditation every single day, which I certainly did and continue to do 18 months later. Very sadly, he did actually pass away. So it was very fortuitous that I actually got to see him exactly when I did in that series of awakening the Kundalini in a completely new way. So I feel very blessed to have met him. And people do find that when they're around me, when I'm teaching Kundalini Yoga or teaching this new system, that their Kundalini flows a lot better. So there is something about being in the transmission of being someone who has an awakened Kundalini, because it's just the way that energy synchronizes and vibrates with energy that it's subjected to. It's just the way that energy will resonate with something that is near to it. And what I found was, I always say theory is the key. When I did the theory exercises, the energy flowed all the way through my whole system and eventually cleared through all of the chakras, right? The 7 energy centers that we all have from the base to the crown, okay? That actually, it led to the full flowing of my energy force field, right? We call that the torus, otherwise known as the toroidal field, okay? This energy that rises up and out and all around the body. And also, when it's activated like mine, it flows all the way in the other direction as well. So I developed this system, or really, let me be clear, Shakti herself, it's like she guided me to create this system. I found that spontaneously I started breaking into spinal flex, which is a Kundalini yoga exercise, a fundamental. I would spontaneously start going from side to side, like the spinal twist that I learned in Kundalini yoga. I would spontaneously start moving around the pelvis in both directions, which is the Sufi grind and then Kundalini yoga. So I actually realized what the yogis of old realized themselves directly. They received these exercises because actually they're not made up. They don't belong to any guru. They don't belong to any yoga practice. This is the way that the Shakti actually wants to move through you, right? We've all got this Shakti energy, okay? And it moves in a particular way, like a wave, right? Like a pulse, a kind of rhythm that wants to spiral its way through the whole system and create this torus field, which, you know, all of nature is made up of these spirals, right? You see it, the spiraling of the galaxies, you know, it's like the earth is spinning in a kind of spiral as well, right? You see it in the snails, you see it in the most primitive form of life that emerged from the ocean, the ammonites. This golden ratio of the spiral, it's just the way that the force of creation moves everything. It's the blueprint of all life. So actually, this is something which you begin to feel and resonate with. And that's an extraordinary thing. So out of this initial emergence of these Kundalini yoga exercises that I had recognized from all of my years of practicing Kundalini yoga, spontaneously arising, Shakti showed me how to create this whole system of 8 parts, right? Which take the journey from the emergence of the Kundalini Shakti all the way to the full flowing of the full force of the energy field, of the aura, of the Taurus. And it's an incredible thing that I just intuitively just surrendered to and developed. So if you are interested in that, please do message me, email me, just get in touch and we can do a private lesson. I also do group sessions as well from time to time if you check out my website. But I will be honored to be your guide and show you just how easy it really, really is to activate the Kundalini in this relaxing way, where you simply learn to relax, open, surrender, and trust the energy that wants to clear through all of your physical tension. It wants to move through all of your emotional blocks. It wants to clear your mind of all the clutter, and ultimately wants to point you right back home to that divine connection with who you really are as a divine, immortal soul, simply having this temporary human experience. Okay, if that interests you, then please do get in touch. I'll leave some links in the description below. So please do let me know if you've had any of these experiences yourself, activating your Kundalini, either through a TRE workshop perhaps, or practicing TRE yourself, or at a sacred site that you felt the energy was very strong, or perhaps inside a cave, or even have you actually sat with a master and had the Shakti pad transmitted to you? Let me know in the comments below. I would be fascinated to read your comments. It's been an honor and a pleasure. My name is Mark T.J. Keane. I'm the Sleeping Serpent, and I hope to see you in my mystery school as well, which I've recently created, Mark's Magical Mystery School, for all sorts of magical and wonderful things to explore. Thanks very much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.